Hello, I am Sonny Lyle. I'm a business owner who has taken Bible College bachelor degree courses on counseling, and it helps me to be qualified to speak on some of today's topics. My expert today with me is Victor Stanton from Deming, New Mexico, USA. He works at Windmill Cowboy Church. There's 5,000 cowboy churches in the States. I've visited one of them in Nashville. I haven't visited yours yet, Victor, but I know that it's fun from what I've seen on the internet, and you have nice barbecues and country western live music with some fairly well-known uh, names in the recording industry. And so today, Victor, you're going to start by speaking. You have a sociology degree and you're quite qualified to speak on this. You're going to start speaking today on government policies, and you're going to speak through a biblical and a social political point of view. So, Victor, let's have you open the topic.
The Bible prophesies the freedom of crushing events that are now unfolding. That is why Canadian politicians who benefit from getting more control by passing certain legislation bills, including trying to silence religious believers in Canada, proposed Bill C9 and are concerned that its broad powers could potentially be used to limit free speech and other civil liberties. Once this Bill 9C passes through the legislation process to become law, we may see a lot of people who have their internet cut off if they are not careful about what they say. And other things they say that our liberal governments do not like. Bill C9 affects all religious groups. The liberal government wants to remove this bill's protection from speech options that are set under sincere religious believers' good faith topics that the government may call hateful or label as hateful. Critics ask, what will then stop police misunderstanding what is religious hate speech that they should apply criminal charges to and what is not able to anymore after this bill passes? Silent prayer, for instance, in England appears to be a crime. We've talked about Isabel Vaughan Spruce previously, and she's quoted saying, despite being hateful, being fully vindicated multiple times as being wrongfully arrested for my thoughts, it's unbelievable that I have yet again been charged for standing in that public area, holding a pro life beliefs silent prayer, or holding a pro life beliefs sign. This can't possibly be a crime. The push is on digital currency right now in both countries to eliminate the use of cash and checks in Canada. The move involves a wide range of actors, including governments and central banks. The banks do not make money off of cash transfers, but they will off of digital money transfers. England's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has recently said that citizens do not accept digital ID, yet they will not be allowed to work unless they have digital ID. The British also fear cyber attacks that could cripple the digital dollar system. So, why would Canada politicians be pushing for a similar system here? Cyber attacks will be one weapon used in future wars. Don't we remember what happened to the whole social security system that was cyber attacked? The member of the WEF includes bankers, billionaires, business owners, and politicians. They have been known to say, we will own nothing and be happy. WEF founder Klaus Schwab says his organization has penetrated the cabinets of various nations, specifically mentioning that more than half of the Canadian cabinet were young global leaders, alumni. Governments put so much red tape on real estate development, the oil industry, mineral harvesting industries, and the farming industry that who knows how long it will take to reverse Canada's downline economic decline. WAF billionaires have been known to buy up farms, homes, and businesses as the owners of these are hurt by financial setbacks. I wonder if using red tape is taught to these politicians when they attend the WEF convention. Sorry. In Vancouver, rich developers have partnered with Squamish First Nations to build high-rise apartment buildings. The process occurred much faster than it would have if these developers did not have the power of this indigenous groups fast-tracking the project. Okay, Sonny, let's see your point of view on these things.
Yeah, so just reiterating on your on Bill C8, you mentioned Bill C9, but Bill C8, if it's passed by legislation, it's being pushed very hard by the Liberal government that's in power. It would give a politician the power to decide if someone's to tell telecom providers to cut off someone's internet. And this is a power that you don't want to give um, to a politician. It's intended, they say it's intended to prevent, to be a cybersecurity kind of thing. But who's to say that they won't abuse that power because they're abusing it in England, as you mentioned. So I'm very concerned, by the way, for hardworking, tax-paying Canadians who lost their homes over the last 10 years with this Liberal government, and they've moved into tents living on the street. And it's because between paying for taxes and food, they had no money left over uh, to pay their mortgage payment or pay rent. Um, I Looking at where billions of dollars are wasted. One of them, in my opinion, is the uh, Indigenous get $32 billion per year from our taxpayers' dollars. Well, I don't think that's really fair if people are living in tents on the street and paying those taxes. It's obvious that there's big salaries from those Indigenous insiders. So now I'm totally for my Indigenous friends. Matter of fact, they're very good acquaintances when I and some famous uh, uh, people from the indigenous community lived in North Vancouver when I lived there, not far from me back in 1978. And that included movie actor Chief Dan George. Um, although I did not, I was not a personal acquaintance friend of Chief Dan George, I was a very good friend of a 93-year-old Indigenous man named AJ who was a friend of Dan George. And AJ attended the health club that I managed at the time. AJ confided in me. He told me that when he was young, so you can imagine that would be 1978 and minus 93 years off that, it would be in the 1800s, late 1800s. He was so grateful, or his family was so grateful when he was a very young boy, um, that his family could trade with white people. And his his parents actually rowed their canoe into Vancouver from North Vancouver to trade for necessities that they really needed. Um, so there was a very symbiotic, very good benefits that the Indigenous community got even way back then. And I bet if you asked AJ if he was still around today, if I did, what he thought about the huge salaries that go to Indigenous elites and insiders out of this $32 billion paid to their tribes, um, he would he would probably say that it's terrible, and because he would know that a lot of people paying those taxes are living from paycheck to paycheck and having a very tough time. So AJ would have, um, he wouldn't want those people that couldn't afford their rent or mortgage payments to be homeless and still pay taxes to that kind of greed. So my book, Hanging on the Ledge of Life, mentions Gordon Campbell, the mayor of Vancouver, and his brother, Michael Campbell. Michael Campbell owned Equity Magazine, who did an article on uh, the fitness centers that myself and a partner of mine owned, and he he is now a journalist, and the television stations actually use him to talk about the economy, and he's actually a very good celebrity. And if you do not believe what I'm saying today, that politicians rise to power in the guise of helping certain ethnic groups in North America to get their votes, and then when they're in power, are doing some really unfair things to other groups of people that are paying taxes, then you could Google Michael Campbell's YouTube show and watch what he has to say, because his topics are a lot like what we're talking about today. Victor, could you please start by telling the viewers the devouring of profits and of personal liberties?
The Apostle Paul warned us about this in 2 Corinthians 11:20. If I could read that to you guys. This provides a sobering parallel to the modern governances. The scripture says, "For you tolerate it if anyone makes you his slave, or devours you and your possessions, or takes advantage of you, or acts presumptuously, or even hits you in the face." In the contemporary Canadian context, many citizens feel a very similar form of this devouring. White heterosexuals, taxpayers pay the lion's share of taxes, yet they are excluded from the very programs that they fund. Tax incentives are used to prioritize specific demographics in hiring, but not the people who fund them. Illegal immigration puts a strain on hospitals, schools, and food banks. Indigenous groups are seeking title of land in Canada. Because of this, individual homeowners in Richmond and British Columbia cannot renew their mortgages, and businesses. Is this thinking not investing anymore in British Columbia? This threatens the very foundation of British Columbia's development sectors. Do you have anything to say about this, Sonny? Your communities, you once suffered from depression. You suffered from depression, suicidal feelings as a young man. That your church helped you outcome.
Right. Yeah, I'll get onto that. So talking about um, the taxpayers, you said that the taxpayers aren't benefiting from the jobs that are offered, the white heterosexual taxpayers, but you just said taxpayers. So I just want to clarify that we're talking about the majority of the Canada's population is white heterosexual people, and other groups that aren't heterosexual, other groups that are not white, are getting hired because companies are offered tax incentives to hire them. So you imagine, Victor, if you had a son in Canada, being that you're white heterosexual, and that son grows up and he's going from place to place to get a job, and nobody wants to hire him because um, they just they just receive money when they uh, uh, in the form of tax incentives from our government for hiring everyone else. So my goal, but despite all that, I really feel a that I really feel sorry for young children on Indian reserves where the water quality is bad, where living conditions are poor, suicidal rates are tragically high, and all the wealth that 32 billion that's going in there doesn't seem to be to the indigenous insider groups for whatever they do, building shopping centers or apartment buildings or whatever they use it for, and nobody really knows entirely where the money goes. But it doesn't seem to be a priority to help some of their people. So, well, my history of mental health struggles and my education qualifies me to empathize with these suffering Indigenous children that have suicidal feelings. Um, Diversity, equity, and inclusion driven hiring quotas prioritize non-white job applicants to be hired instead of me in these kind of positions. And a lot of people face that across the board because of the tax incentives given to other groups. So here's a quote from an ancient Egyptian person contemplating suicide that I studied at my college, and it's a good example that when you're in a predicament of depression and you don't know Jesus, who do you turn to? You know, who do you pray to if uh, you don't know what's good or bad? You don't know if there's someone who cares about you like a God or Jesus. It's anyways. This Egyptian, ancient Egyptian man, said, "Who is there to talk to today? No man of satisfied mind. One to walk quietly with does not exist. Who is there to talk to today? I am bowed too low with my misery, lacking someone to share the thoughts in my heart. Who is there to talk to today? Wrong doing beats on the earth, and of it there is no end." So that comes to a thought when these teachers that worked in the past at Indigenous residential schools, um, along with just non-Indigenous people whose ancestors settled Canada in the when we back in Confederation and shortly after. Now, we're called even we're called to account by these indigenous groups um, and saying that we've done no good for them. There is so much good that has been done for indigenous people. They've been receive all kinds of benefits from being part of Canada, and and we're called instigators of cultural genocide. So the people who have been accused, um, they they of this, they lovingly erected hundreds of totem poles provided by native artists, like Stanley Park or in Victoria near the museum, and hundreds of locations in British Columbia, and they're most graciously changing street names to Indigenous names. On the other hand, um, John A. Macdonald, our first prime minister's statue, was torn down in front of several government buildings, including in Victoria. And he, in the back then, and as a first prime minister in just before the 1900s, late 1800s Confederation, he, um, I guess it would probably be 1867 as Confederation. So he was responding to Indigenous children to get better educations and therefore develop these schools where the Indigenous children went and lived, and then they went home for summers to their parents. And the the it's believed, according to Dallas Brody, and that investigated it, a member of the legislature in British Columbia, that the Indigenous groups back then actually begged the Canadian government, including our first prime minister, to have educations for their kids, and these schools were developed for that. So many former teachers, including nuns, have stated that they loved and cared for the students in the Indigenous schools that they worked at. They were very offended to be accused of having something to do with um, apparently a purported claim of 215 graves at the Kamloops Residential School. Um, and they really want this to be investigated, so their names can be cleared. And millions of dollars have been given to the Indigenous to do a dig and find out, but they don't do it. And it's really how you can claim something without investigating it is really beyond me. So another thing I want to bring up, and that's not just Indigenous schools, but in the schools of everyone else as well. In children's libraries, there is books with drawing of same-sex uh, image pleasuring each other. And in the schools, the history that used to teach us that the good that the settlers did and did for our country and all of the people that came here, including the indigenous people, is not being not and replaced with saying that they were colonizers and they were bad, and this is not good. The country, um, that's a really a form of mind control, isn't it, Victor?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah. So you're going to talk a little bit now.
Children of all nationalities feel this depression when school teachers teaching them about these confusing topics that they cannot comprehend. They don't know how to talk to their parents about them because they're not equipped with this knowledge to do so. Bruce Springsteen famously relied on the support of close friends to navigate his depression. Springsteen remarks, it's not the time in your life, it's the life in your time. This highlights the importance of the quality of our connections with the human spirit and the ability to endure. Children must be taught how to think, not what to think, how to use experience, not what experiences they should use, uh, not what to think by the people they're taught by. This is an abomination. Margaret Mead emphasized independent thought and questioning. A counselor working with the struggling children on the reservation reserved might ask depressed children these questions. On a scale of 1 to 10, how heavy does your heart feel today? Are you being bullied or abused at school or at home? Have you felt the need to use drugs or alcohol to cope with your feelings are questions we should ask our kids, interrelating with them as we study with them.
Right. So yes, and those are questions that I would ask if I was a counselor on indigenous kids that are suffering from depression. Um, now, we've been talking about some of these uh, measures that the government are taking to stifle our freedom. And it's socialism. It's almost on the verge of communism. And Margaret Thatcher, and you had actually mentioned Bruce Springsteen, and we all know that is a famous recording artist, and everyone loves his music. But Margaret Thatcher famously observed that the trouble with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money. And that is a quote, that is what she said. And this aligns with the warning in Proverbs 16:17, which says, "The highway of the upright turns aside from evil. He who guards his way preserves his life." When a government deviates from the highway of the upright by overreaching into the lives of its citizens, it risks the preservation of the nation itself. Just as Corinthians warned about those who would take advantage, Canadians must remain vigilant against the devouring of their substance and the erosion of their liberties. 2 Corinthians 11:20 in the Amplified says, "For if you tolerate anyone who makes you a slave or devours you and your possessions, or takes advantage of you, or acts presumptuously, or hits you in the face," this is what our fantastic, and I'm saying that facetiously, liberal government is doing. It's almost like a slap in the face to us. As an example, under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and Mark Carney isn't reversing any of this, although it's bad and he should be. Um, he he ceased the enforcement of a law requiring Indigenous communities to publicly post their audited financial statements so we know that their money is being spent for um, the poor and the needy, not just for wealthy insiders. So also, when we see these homes that in Richmond, BC, and now in Quebec, and they're going after Kamloops, all of the city of Kamloops in the courts. The Indigenous group were unleashed to be able to do this because of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples called UNDRIP, which Prime Minister Justin Trudeau approved into legislation. So Justin Trudeau, if you check according to sources, the World Economic Forum website, he is called an agenda contributor. And as you said, Victor, Klaus Schwab had said that over half of Trudeau's and Mark Carney's cabinet were members of the World Economic Forum in one capacity or another. So if I could talk to Trudeau, I would ask him why, for instance, such a meager amount, like take 1.5% of 32 billion. What it comes out to be is 487 million, and that of our tax dollars is all that, say, an organization like the Salvation Army that houses and feeds significant portion of Indigenous peoples all across Canada gets. After religious leaders questioned our government for an accounting of where taxpayer waste goes, the government started proposing of legislation recommendation number 420, seeking to remove advancement of religion as a charitable status. So, Victor, can you close now with just a couple of comments? Thank you.
We have in the bills that were uncovered by Elon Musk, and we have by Trump trying to help out these other countries that he's trying to help out. He's trying to uncover the corruption in our countries, and people are fighting against him in doing this. We have the 10 Commandments that God gave us to live socially with each other and with Him. We have Jesus saying, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but render unto God what is God's, which is your heart, mind, and soul. Before, love the Lord your God. Love Him with all your heart, mind, and soul. And seek the kingdom of heaven first, and all these things that you worry about will be added unto you. But we're not doing that. We're just focusing on our own needs, our own wants, our own minds, and God sets these people in power to show us where we're wrong and where we're erring, so that we can wake up and hopefully turn back to Him and back to the right ways. When
Right.
these leaders, we see them doing bad things, we need to turn back to the Lord. Sonny talks about this in his book, Hanging on the Ledge of Life, which is just $4.50 on Goodread. Buy it, read it, see how the people are erring in the life. It would make a great movie if you get it made into a movie. He talks about this man who was hit by a whale for doing wrong things. If that didn't wake the guy up, but it didn't wake the guy up. So we have to realize what's going on here in our lives before we get hit by the backhand of the Lord saying, wake up.
Yeah. So this humpback whale that crushed my ex-partner that harmed me and came back and vandalized my businesses after I bought him out. He and stealing from me, put me out of business. Um, he really was his boat while he was fishing humpback whale paralyzed him. And if that's not a act of biblical proportions, I don't know what is. But you know, my family, we partnered in gyms and well, actually in the nightclubs my dad owned, and my uncle. This is a great story in my book because it talks about celebrities and. In one of the most famous nightclubs in Vancouver, the Cave nightclub that my grandfather ran, he met Frank Sinatra, um, all kinds of famous people. Lena Horne, actually, the movie star and recording artist, actually used to come to and stay at our house or my dad and my grandfather's house in North Vancouver when they, in between the times that she played at the Cave nightclub and the Penthouse nightclub where my grandfather managed. So the book is fantastic and be a great movie. Um, so mainly, however, the book dives deep into the topic of knowing God and how God will bless us and how to have a relationship with God in prayer and praise. So, Victor, that's about all the time we have today. I want to thank you and say goodbye. Okay.
Goodbye. Have a good night. You know how to reach us on Facebook, Biblical Authors and Speakers, or on the Windmill Cowboy Church Facebook page. We hope to see you guys talking to us on there to talk about these topics. Have a good week.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.